As it says, recording in progress. We're back again.
We're here.
There we are, indeed. And I want some information out of Fiona, and hopefully it will all be fun for you too. In fact, I'm sure it will be, because Fiona births drums. I've done this too, but Fiona does it for other people. I've really only done it for myself and the odd few people. So we hear about birthing drums, but what's birthing a drum for you, Fiona?
It's the establishment of a partnership. I have a drum. Surprise, surprise. This is a drum that I actually made for myself. I'll push the chair back a bit and then you can hold it up and you can see it's a drum. It's an oval shaped drum.
Yeah.
Now, when I play this drum, there are at least 4 of us involved, because there's the boar who died and whose skin this is. There's the oak tree who provided the timber to make the hoop.
Right.
There's whatever went into making paracord. I don't know why this drum wanted paracord. It just did. So this is a drum that took me 8 months. It was this, that, and the other, and we argued about it forever. And then you have a drum like this one, and this is a horse and an ash tree. And in this case, the lacing is the same, came from the same skin. So that one's a much simpler one in construction.
So in that case, in the first one, there's 4 of you.
There's also, of course, the beater. Now, in this case, this is
can
a
we
sheep.
slow down just a moment? Because the first one is 4 of you, but then if I got that right, the second one is only 3 of you.
There's still 4 of us there. At least 4, I said, because there is the horse, the tree, there's me, and then there is the drum, which is much more than the sum of its parts. So this is not the voice of a horse.
No.
It's the voice of a drum. Slightly flat, cold drum this morning. It's a bit chilly. But it's not the noise you get from banging on a tree. It's not the noise you get from patting a horse. It's not my voice, but it is the voice of the drum. And the spirit of the drum is what you birth when you bring together all these parts. The person who makes it, the person who's going to play it, the tree, the animal hide. If you're making a beater, then the beater is involved as well. If you're playing with your hand, then it's not. I mean, in this case, we've got a sheep and a deer, because this is chamois leather and a sheep's rib. And it's padded with sheep wool. So there again, there's another.
That was tied on with something else.
Well, that's tied on again with paracord. I've got one here that's tied on with, this is horsehide. So all of these different spirits come together to birth a new drum or a new beater. And that's what the process of birthing is. I midwife these into the world.
That's lovely. Yeah.
So all the time you're working with this enormous piece of soggy, wet, clammy, cold leather that's dry, wet, and there's the spirit of the animal in there. And waiting to come through is the spirit of the drum.
Right.
And in the same way, you take a piece of wood and you sand it down and you polish it. You might need to paint on it or draw on it. It may take 10 minutes to work your piece of wood. It may take, in the case of the drum of the Wheel of the Year, it took me 18 months before I even got to put the hide on, because it needed to be painted at specific times with specific pictures. It's a very fussy drum. But that's the drum it is.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to be a little bit more specific here as well. I said that's the drum it is. Technically, he is.
Right. Yes, I was worrying about that. Yes.
Yes. Now, I've got 3 drums here. 2 of them are straightforward. They're both male. Thunderhoof and the Wheel of the Year are both male.
Right.
And then I've got this fussy piece, whom you know very well because you helped me birth it.
I did.
Are we male today or are we female today? Her. Right. This drum is the drum of leaping waters, because she was born near waterfalls. And as you can see, she believes in living it up. So
I mean, decorating your drum, but yeah. Okay.
we had, you'll remember the arguments we had over whether or
I
not
do.
it was going to be feathers or ribbons on the back.
Yes.
She was originally holding out for feathers. It's like, I'm not stitching that many feathers on. You can have ribbons. And eventually we settled with ribbons. But this is part of the process of midwifing that drum into the world. And to some extent, it never stops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a drum may be perfectly happy for 20 years and then go, I want my picture refreshed. And I'd like it slightly changed here and here and here and here and here. And while you're at it, I don't like that color ribbon. I want a different color ribbon.
Yeah.
So then you rework the drum, or you rework with the drum.
That's more like it. Yes, that feels
Because,
right.
as I said, this is a partnership. And very much as a midwife can't produce babies out of thin air.
Yeah.
You know, you need to have the mother materials. You need to have the father materials. And you work together, all of you, to birth a new drum, who is a new being, a new spirit.
Yeah, yeah. Is it really a new spirit though, or is it a spirit that's taken over a new body?
It can be either.
Ah.
It depends what that particular spirit needs. And as you know, Ellen, I have a rabbit here who's on her first incarnation as a soul.
I do, yes. That was fascinating.
And she's a new spirit who's taken over the body of a rabbit. And in the same way, you can have a new spirit who comes into a drum, or you could have an old spirit taking a rest from some other incarnation who decides that I need to be a drum this time for a while.
Yeah, I've had that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you may find that the drum, the spirit of the drum, may have connections to a deity.
Indeed.
Or to an animal, or to a tree, or to a place. Drum of Leaping Waters is particularly a waterfall drum.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
Whereas Thunderhoof is very much a horse. As for the Wheel of the Year, I think he takes in everything.
Yeah, it sort of makes sense for that, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't actually, so you can't sort of say, I'm going to make a bridey drum.
No. And it's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you when you're making drums. You can choose your hide and your wood, and you choose the day, and you choose what style you're going to use. And then you come out the other end and you go, good God, how did that happen?
And it's quite different to what you started off thinking it might be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That goes for one of our expressions, doesn't it? Which I use in all the apprenticeship work and you use all the time, is sort of be full of expectancy, but not expectations.
You never get what your expectation was. Something will be out of this. It will be a great drum.
Yeah.
But you learn not to think, I'm going to make a drum for this purpose. Yeah. And when I make a drum for somebody else, that person has to be drawn in and involved.
Yes. Yeah.
Sit with this. What hide do you think you need to work with? Sit and feel with it. Sit and talk to the spirit of the animal. Sit and talk to the spirits of all the animals, of all the hides I have on hand. Yeah. Choose one.
Yeah.
And the same with the wood.
Yeah.
Oak, ash, willow, but they all have different characters, different traits. They may want to work with you this year, next year. I've not had one turn around and go, just no, yet.
We're not discounting that one though, are we?
No, it's a process of options.
Yeah, it is. That really makes it like a partnership.
Absolutely, it's a partnership. Yes. You all have to agree to work together.
Yeah. So if somebody comes to you and they sort of say, I really want to make my drum. I really want to make my own drum. I mean, I had somebody do this at the weekend. I really want to make my own drum. I know I want to make my own drum. How do you start with them?
The first thing I do is I sit them down and get them to have a cup of tea. Calm down, relax, we can do this.
Yeah, I understand that.
What sort of drum? What are the options available? Now, I don't use artificial hide, and I don't use plastic frames. Obviously, paracord is perceptive, is allowable. It wasn't in my mind to begin with, but one drum and one beater so far have said it will be paracord. Okay, I surrender, it's paracord. It could be string. Yeah. I actually sit in two traditions for the drum making. And I'll bring this androgynous drum of mine back over. As you can see in this one, there's a metal hoop in the center. Can you just see that through?
Yes, we can see that now. Yeah.
You can see that. That metal hoop has a separate handle in the middle, which
just
hiding under the plumage is a handle. It's difficult to see on this one. Whereas the other drum style I do doesn't have a ring in the middle.
Right.
And the same sinew is used, the same piece of hide provides the lacing for both of them. But this style, you make the handle entirely out of the lacing.
Yeah.
They both have their slight differences. They're both perfectly valid ways of making a perfectly good drum.
Yeah.
So start by thinking about that. Sit and think about what sort of animal hide, what sort of timber. And when you've sat and meditated and asked the spirits of the wood and the hide and of the metal hoop, if you want a metal hoop, then we can start thinking about making the drum.
So there's quite a lot involved before you even get anywhere near it.
Well, there should be a lot involved in a birth.
That's true.
I mean, it takes a long time to make a baby.
Yes, it does. That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And you do need to have, the old term was congress.
Can you explain that for us?
Now, it's an old medieval term in this sense. One had congress with a member of the other sex in order to make a child.
Yeah.
These days, you just have sex with them. But I quite like the word congress. It suggests discussion. It suggests a meeting of equals.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what you're doing when you're birthing a drum. You all meet as equals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
so
agree.
You don't have any control in that sense. You don't have any control over it at all.
No. Which is where you get to the point where, like a child, you stand back after the child is born and grows up, and you think, how on earth did I have a child like that? Good grief.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So one of the things people have to get the handle on is that you actually ask the spirit of the tree, the spirit of the animal, and the spirit who's going to be born into this. It's like you're making a body.
Yes.
For this thing, this drum, and your opinion is one of however many amongst that group.
In many ways, my opinion is the least important, because all I'm doing is I'm birthing a drum.
So you're making a body.
All I'm doing is I'm creating this body out of materials that come from other beings. The tree is a being, an animal is a being. They have to have a voice.
Yes. Yeah.
And they have to have at least an equal voice.
Yeah.
Now, if I want to make myself an equal in that discussion, so to speak, then I might go into it and say, I'm going to make a horsehide drum on an ash frame. May I please have the suitable horsehide and the suitable piece of ash, who would like to come together with me, and we'll work together to make this drum which will be enlivened by the spirit of this drum. It doesn't guarantee it's going to work.
No, I mean, I've actually had that. I sort of
Yes.
said, you know, in my case, I wanted to make a road drum on either ash or birch, and it did not happen for me for ages. And eventually it did happen, but it would happen when it was the right moment and the right animal and the right animal skin in the right way, sort of thing. So yeah, I get that.
Yes. If you try and force the process, you're bound to fail.
Yes, that runs with everything in working magic.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that what I'm doing is I'm creating a body for the spirit to inhabit.
Yes.
That is exactly what we're doing.
Right.
The process of birthing a drum is to create the body. But the conception moment is when the spirit of the drum has that moment in the other world where they're between incarnations and goes, that drum birther, those materials, that's the body that I shall go and inhabit.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
I see that.
As you know, when an animal is, when any embryo is in development, there is a moment when they begin to move for themselves.
Yeah.
It's called the quickening.
Yes, which
The
it always
embryo
was. That's
quickens.
another old word, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the moment when the spirit enters and takes on this. I quite like your phrase for it, this spacesuit for Mother Earth.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah.
And that's all a body is. It's a spacesuit. It's where your soul inhabits.
Yeah.
And when you're birthing a drum, you build the spacesuit for the spirit to inhabit. Now, obviously, in the case of a drum, it's not suddenly going to start moving by itself. Not usually.
Well, it does in a way, doesn't
We've
it?
had a few jump off the walls over the years.
I was thinking of in the tensioning though.
In the tensioning, there is a moment as you're drawing all the chords in, and you work your way around and you keep pulling a little bit more tension, a little bit more tension. You test it, and it sounds like someone's slapping a wet dishcloth. I think that's not a drum. And then you go around and you tighten it up again and again, and maybe again. You end up with about 6 yards of string hung over that you didn't think you were going to have because you only got the last inch round. And then there's that moment when, for the very first time, it doesn't make a sound like a wet dishcloth. It goes boing.
Yeah. Very, very softly.
Very soft, still quite slack. But there is a moment of music. Suddenly you can hear, this is a voice.
Yeah.
And that's the moment of enlivening.
Yeah.
That's when the spirit is
magic. I've done this, and
yes,
and you know, I've been with other people, and Fiona's been doing it with them, and the look on their faces.
yes,
you hear it. You think, oh, I'm never going to hear that. You do. Every single person does,
yes.
and it's total magic.
And you stop tightening at that moment.
Yeah.
Because that from there, the drying process will take over. It's quite interesting because people come to me, they've never made a drum before. Like, well, how will I know when it's done? It's like, you'll know. You will know. You will. You really will. And the look of enlightenment on their faces, they go, I know. That was it.
I've even seen tears.
Oh, yes. And I don't know if you've ever watched the Pirates of the Caribbean, but the character Jack Sparrow taps the leading man on the shoulder and he goes, you know, the opportune moment, that was it. And it is very much that.
Yes, I remember that. It was very good.
It was excellent. And that is the moment.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really the moment where you go, yes, I have birthed another drum.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's the drying process. You do all the tidying up and the finishing off of the handle, and you put it away to dry carefully. Standing up on its side, wrapped in a damp towel. And every day you turn it by 90 degrees. You take the towel off once it's all dried. Because the important thing is to make sure your drum doesn't dry too quickly.
Yes.
If it dries too quickly, it dries unevenly and then it twists. So it dries slowly in a cool, dark place. And when it's completely dry, you begin to warm it by moving it from a cool, dark place to a slightly less cool, dark place. You can bring it into the light. Until at last it's hanging on the wall as yours are behind you.
Yeah.
Ready to come down and play with you.
So it takes ages.
It does. It takes about, I think the fastest I've ever managed to birth a drum was probably 3 weeks.
Yeah.
As I said, the drum of the wheel of the year took 18 months.
Yeah.
And a bit more, because that was only the moment when it finished with the hoop. But these impatient comments coming from you all the time. Are you getting anywhere with that? No.
That's because I wanted to see it. But that's
it in the end.
But it does take time. Yes, you know, you can go for a one drum birthing workshop and that. You usually won't have done all of this process.
You'll get there and you'll find that the skin has been cut to size for you.
Yeah.
And perhaps, you know, the lacing's been prepared and the holes have been cut and the hoop's been polished.
Yeah.
You still get some time to work with them, some time to sit and introduce yourself. It's not as intimate a process as it is doing your own drum from, I've ordered the materials, they'll arrive in the post next week.
Yeah.
You should still have been asked to choose your materials. So you should still have had that meditation process with the materials
and the
in
good
spirit,
the
but
good
not under your hands.
the good drum birthers we know all do that. They sort of say, you know, have you thought about this? Have you meditated on this? Have you sat with this kind of thing? So you're sure that's what you want, sort of thing.
Yes.
I think that's really important, but I think it's important too to the intimacy. To me, is so important. I mean, we've both got
the actual. If you're working all the way from here is half a hide that's arrived in the post, or a whole hide, depending on how big you want to go, to sitting with it, to watching it as it soaks. I mean, as you know, the process of change that goes through a hide as it soaks.
It's amazing.
It's incredible. We've both seen a red deer stag hide in the bath. We'll have a galloping horse turn up and gallop across it and disappear.
And
just
then
in some shape.
And, you know, and as it comes out and it's dry, it's gone.
It's gone completely.
But you know
that particular hide, it was gone before I even took it out of the bath.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
It was there overnight. If I hadn't been going up and checking every hour and going, oh wow, it's moved its legs, I wouldn't have known. I think that's quite an important part. That's why I like to help people to birth their own drums, which is even better than birthing a drum for them.
And I was going to go into that because Fiona lives in the wilds of northeast Scotland.
Yes.
Not near anything really, except interesting things like stone circles and barrows and hills and mountains and that sort of thing.
Yes, but I am a bit short on bus stations, train stations and airports.
Yes.
Yes.
It's about like 40 miles. Kind of thing, which is a little further away than me. But yes, we both live in the wilds of nowhere. So obviously you can go to Fiona's and birth a drum.
Absolutely. And people have.
And it does require you to stay at least a couple of nights. So, you know, you have to put that into your plans as well. But since you got involved with those lassies from New York who wanted to make a drum with you,
physically couldn't come here.
Yeah.
Particularly at the depths
of COVID anyway.
Yes, could not leave the States. So we worked by Zoom. And I now do offer drum birthings on Zoom.
Yeah.
I won't be with you through the whole process, but for all the important bits, we can be talking to each other face to face, as we are now.
Yeah.
So I can see what you're doing, and I can say, no, not that way. Go the other way around, and things like that.
Yeah.
And I will be there to say, that was the moment.
Yeah.
Stop now. You've reached that point.
Because you actually do hear it over the microphone on Zoom.
Yes.
Because we've seen this happen. And so we know that it actually happens. So you know, people sort of say, oh, well, you know, you've got to be face to face with each other. There are ways around that.
Oh, yes.
And Fiona's found them.
I do. I'm not going to drop you cold into this, obviously. So if you contact me and say, I'd like to make a drum, but I can't get to Aberdeenshire, then that's fine. We'll have a long conversation. We'll probably Zoom a couple of times while we discuss the materials and the process and what you're going to need and how long. And point out that you will need to send the husband and kids need to go away for a couple of days while you're working on this, or at least have a room that they won't come into. Because you want to be there to experience it.
Yes. Yeah, that's important. This is yours.
Yes.
It's not a family experience.
Yes. But then you choose your materials and I will post them to you. And I'll post with them a set of instructions that will walk you through it so that it helps you remember you need to sit with the hide. You need to sit with the hoop. Handle them, feel them, sandpaper them, not the hide.
No. Especially if it's reindeer. No.
Look closely at the hide and work out which side goes on the inside and which side goes on the outside.
And if necessary, say, Fiona, I need a quick chat. Is this the
Absolutely.
outside?
Yes. Yes. It's very easy to tell which is which. But there is a bit of a knack to it. I'll just digress for a minute. There's two sides to an animal. There's the inside and the outside. And when you put the skin off the animal and put it onto a drum, you still have the inside on the inside and you still have the outside on the outside. So you need to tell which is which. Now, the outside, that's called the grain side, is usually a bit smoother. And the inside has had little muscle fibers and things, and it's a little bit rougher. So that's how you tell.
The inside is the bit that you see through the lacing.
Yes. This is the outside of a red deer.
Right.
In there is the inside of the red deer.
Hidden under her skirts.
Yes.
Since she's like this morning.
Yes. And it may well be that you have a skin that's incredibly rough. I mean, the boar hide on this is like sandpaper. Yeah. He's gorgeous and I love him, but there's no getting around it. You don't want to cuddle him too much. You'll come out with razor rash. But that's the way he is. But again, you can still tell the inside from the outside by those little muscle fibers. Because you must have seen an animal when it twitches. Fly lands twitch. Horses do it. Cats do it. Dogs do it. We're not very good at it. We don't have the muscle fibers in the same way. But you can see them just sort of twitch their skin. And those little muscle fibers give it a roughness on the inside. So that's part of the life of the animal that continues into the life of the drum.
Indeed. And so, I mean, you're learning so much in this. It's really fascinating.
Yes.
I know it's really fascinating, but it's always fascinating when you hear it as a story from someone.
And again, when you look at the hide of a drum, the life story of the deer is written in here. Yes. Each of these little marks is a scar from something that's bitten the poor stag. And you can see here, this line is actually where the backbone was under there. So in life, that was over the spine, and then these were either side, coming down the ribs of the stag. Quite how, perhaps he always slept on one side, because you can see he got bitten more on one side than the other.
Probably did. I mean, most of us have a tendency to prefer being on that side.
Yes.
And animals do too. They like to curl that way instead of that way.
Yes.
Whatever it is. So yeah. So
again, that's part of the life of the animal that carries on into the life of the drum.
Yeah.
And you see the same in the knotwork and the grain from the wood.
Yeah.
That's the history of the tree. This was a good year. That was a bad year. That was a very hard winter. These all carry through into the drum. Yeah. So every drum is absolutely unique. You can't make two drums apart the same if you try.
No.
They're always
you shouldn't even try anyway.
No.
Because they're definitely going to be. But this whole birthing the spirit is just fascinating. So how would you want to finish it up?
Finish up the drum.
Well, and you know what
I like to take my drum out and play for the first time outside,
yes.
which I think is the rounding out of the birthing process, because you have the quickening, and then you have the rest of the gestation process as the drum dries and it creaks and it twists and it sort of gets itself into shape like this. And finally, it's sort of settled. And then when it's completely bone dry and warm, and you can hear the voice, the final voice of the drum, I like to take them outside into the wilds.
Yes.
And I like to play them near water. I go out and play with the horses in the field.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting because very often I'll take a drum out and I'll begin playing it and the horses will come. And I end up playing with the drum like this, me in the middle, and noses all around. And occasionally dunk, dunk, dunk from a nose as they join in.
Yeah.
The sheep are quite young and I haven't tried playing a new drum with them yet, but I think that could be fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
I
might
found
get
the same
petty.
thing even with my cat, who enjoys it.
Yes.
If we get quite loud, if there's several of us and we get quite loud, then she likes to enjoy it from the door,
Yes.
because her hearing is infinitely better than ours.
Yes.
But she does enjoy it. Oh, they're doing that again. Oh, they're all,
Yeah.
and she feels us link with the drums, and she feels us link together.
Yes.
That's part of it for me, is this final, you know, when you actually take it out and play it in the woods, on the beach, by a river, wherever, we're together.
Yes. It's the seal of the partnership.
Yeah. The wedding, if you like.
Yes. Yes. So that's how I like to finish a drum off in that sense.
So how do people get in touch with you to do this then?
I have a Patreon site. I have a Facebook page. I will have an email address shortly, both of which will be on both the Facebook and the other. And you will find me at Pictavian Drums.
Pictavian Drums.
Well, I do live in Pitland.
This is very true, you do. So Pictavian Drums is something we shall look for.
Yes.
So I think whoever puts this up on whatever sites, in the comments, we'll actually put that link.
Yes.
Because not everybody's going to be able to spell Pictavian.
That was the problem with my old website under the old trading name of Banshee Drums. Because I'd spelt it in Scottish Gaelic. I had to, because there is actually a make of commercial drum set called Banshee, Banshee, which is the easy way of spelling it.
Yeah.
So I had to spell mine in Scottish Gaelic, and people do struggle with that, I will admit. Yeah. So we're rebranding, we're now Pictavian to represent where I live, is in Pitland.
Which is reasonably easy to spell, and not quite so totally. Why have you got an H and a D in there?
Yes, what is that? Yes.
Which certainly makes it. Well, we'll put that up, and yeah, you just contact Fiona anytime.
Contact me. I'm always happy to help birth a drum.
Yeah, and you sort out. I mean, costs we can't tell you because it depends on what hide and what wood and all that kind of thing. So
yes,
maybe on the site you can give an idea that it'll be between this and this kind of thing.
Yes, plus
that'll be the best we can do, really, because it depends on the materials that you've got.
Which is up to you.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add is all the materials I use are ethically sourced.
Yes. Yeah.
You won't find any animal hide that hasn't either died naturally or the hide is being used because the whole animal should be used.
Yeah.
So if somebody has raised, a cow and it's had a good life, and then it comes to the end of that life and it's put down, you shouldn't just waste it. So then I will take that hide and I will happily make a drum from it. But I won't have a hide from an animal that's been killed just for the hide.
Which is really important to know.
Yes.
And that's taking us back into this whole thing of partnership again.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, fantastic. Go for it, people.
Look forward to hearing from people.
Okay, guys, see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.